go to 8:02 and then we'll get started. And I will ask if there's anybody new on the call to identify themselves. If there's anybody so far who hasn't been on one of these calls before, we don't usually, we've dispensed with introductions because it's a big group, but if you're new to the call, don't be afraid to raise your hand if you haven't been on one before.
Rachel Orvik, this is my counterpart, Chris from St. Paul Curling Club can't make it tonight, so I'm on.
Oh, great, Rachel. That's why we have two
Thank you.
reps. Yeah.
That's right.
Not everybody's life revolves around curling 24/7, so we got to give people an opportunity to do other things.
How is that, Matt? How is that possible?
I know it's baffling, but still it happens.
Yeah, stuff comes up.
While we're waiting to start, it's 8:02. While we wait for other people, I do want to say, we have a summer Bonspiel schedule, summer curling schedule on our website for people to look at. I also want to make a pitch here for the Pan Am Masters games, and Rick Hubbard's on here. That's going to be in Cleveland at the Cleveland Skating Club from July 13 to July 18. If you go to events and then championships, you'll see a link to register for that. That registration is open until June 12th. Our Sean Olson from USA Curling is going to be working on the ice. He was there last week to look at the venue. And Susie Sarnetsky is going to lead the umpire crew. So it's a good opportunity for anybody on this call or just to make sure people in your club are aware of it. I think Brett's on. He's played in Masters games in the winter. This is the Pan Am Masters games in the summer. So, and if you haven't been to the Cleveland Skating Club, it's a great facility. It's a unstuffy country club with a skating rink instead of a golf course. Let's call it that. I mean, if Rick's a member, it's unstuffy, right? So, yeah. But it's very nice. So, I hope that if you want to, if you have people at your club who are looking for summer curling, that's certainly a good one for people to consider. Okay. With that, sorry, go ahead, Rick.
I just said thank you.
Oh yeah. So Rick and Annie Hubbard are heading that up out in Cleveland. So yeah, feel free to socialize that within your own membership, along with any other summer plans. I think we can. I tried to keep the agenda maybe just a little shorter tonight, so we can dive into some things and have a little more dialogue, so you're not all listening to me as much. I'll touch on our plans for the members assembly that will be in Chaska, Minnesota at the Chaska Curling Center from August 9th to 11th. So the members meeting will be on Friday evening at Chaska in their events center. So that's the big room. If you haven't been there, that's where the members meeting will be. So that'll be in person, and we'll make that available virtually as well. So that will be where voting, et cetera, will take place. There will be votes on things like directors, et cetera. We're not having a vote, say, as consequential as last year's members assembly when it came to bylaw amendments, et cetera, but there will be things to vote on. So I think the key message there for everybody on this call is we'll have Dick Dawson, our secretary, is going to be on next month's call to talk about the voting platform. But you just want to make sure that your clubs are asking, if they're a member club, if you're with a member club, you should be asking members, are they all good with the member club carrying their votes? So if an individual wants to separate their vote, you should be giving them that option. But in the interest of, it'll certainly be more efficient if member clubs are carrying member votes, but members do have the option to remove their vote from the club. So does anybody have any questions on that? And we do have an electronic voting platform that should make it fairly straightforward. We won't have to do like a long roll call vote that'll take us into Tuesday or anything like that. So because as opposed to in the past with the old system where we had regions carrying votes, we're going to have all the member clubs carrying votes. So, and some individuals, but it should be fairly seamless. So you have any questions on the voting, throw them. I'll open up the chat too. Sorry, just so I can see that. If you have any questions on voting, feel free to throw them in there, but it should be pretty straightforward. We'll continue to communicate information about that. And like I said, we'll have Dick on the next call to explain the platform that we'll be using. In terms of the members assembly, which are the sort of the programming activities, our real focus this year is we want to put a focus on certification opportunities. So we are going to have officiating clinics, level 1 and level 2. I was just talking to Susie last night about that. We're planning another Ice Tech training session that will probably be at Blaine, it will be at Blaine and Four Seasons versus Chaska. That's the plan right now because the mixed doubles pre-trials are also underway. I'll get to that question in the chat. And then we have, we're working on a coaching conference. We also, Craig Perry, our Chief Operating Officer, and Phil Drobnik have done some good work on coaching, online coaching modules. So we'll be introducing those at the coaching conference. And I don't know how many people know Gordon McLean, but I'm talking to Gordon tomorrow about establishing some analytics certification that we'd like to roll out at this members assembly as well. That would be teaching people how to be scorers, how to score games. So that would be a new certification for us that I think there's some enthusiasm for. And then the other things we'd like to round it out with are some time on the ice with national team coaching staff and others for skills sessions and a brushing clinic. So those are activities we have planned. We will likely have a session with some clubs that have made the transition from being an arena club to a dedicated ice club with a panel discussion as well. So that'll be in person and virtual. So that's the thought on this year's members assembly. Of course, the mixed doubles pre-trials will be going on as well. So that will be, there'll be some great curling going on. It's going to be a pretty busy weekend. They also have the United States Golf Association has their U.S. Amateur over at Hazeltine the same weekend, and they actually have the Crooked Pint booked from like 7 to 9 on Friday. So lots going on. Sort of the first year and a goal to make this a real curling convention of sorts. We're certainly not, this will be step one, and we'll roll out information on that. One of the things that we're just waiting on in that is just to see how many teams are in the pre-trials, because that will determine our time on the ice, et cetera. So we're sort of expecting about 8 to 12 teams in the pre-trials. So we will have opportunities to use the ice. In terms of somebody asked a deadline to declare for members when they would like to separate their votes from the club. I'm gonna have to say I don't know what that deadline is. I think Brett's on. He might know, but I'd probably defer to our secretary, Dick Dawson. I could pull it up in the bylaws, but that'll take too much time here. But that's good information that we need to share. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, sorry, that's a Dick question.
Yeah.
I
And
apologize for not knowing that. As you were describing all this stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, we really need to start making sure and socializing all of these deadlines that are coming up around nominating folks and certifying who's going to be voting, all that stuff.
And look for a release here in the next couple of weeks on that. We'll put some more information out about it, but at least prepare, if you can, your member clubs for that idea that either they're carrying the votes of their members, or if they have members who want to separate their vote to identify themselves. Probably sooner is better. So does anybody have any questions around the members assembly? I see somebody said they're all in for Moneyball for curling. I think that the analytics certification should be interesting. And one of the things we're hoping to do with that is to have people score games via YouTube throughout a season. We can score games remotely from our nationals, so we do want to amp that up. I think the way it will probably work is maybe it'll either be Friday or Saturday evening. We'll do an off-ice session, and I'm actually have a meeting with Gordon to go over this tomorrow, but an off-ice session, and then you'll score some games during the mixed doubles pre-trials with somebody there. So if you have people who are interested in that, I know personally I would actually enjoy that more than officiating if I was looking for something, but I think the main point is there's different things for different people. Phil's asking about certification classes on the East Coast, Phil, and we are talking to Ardsley and some others on the East Coast about an Ice Tech certification class out there. And obviously, we're not looking to replace all certification processes with just being at the members assembly. It's not going to replace, but we do want to make it a place where if you really do want to come and knock out some certifications, it makes it easy. The other thing I'll add on the members assembly is we were in Minnesota last year. We're at Chaska this year, which is a great facility, and Jeff Isaacson is a great host. But we're not always going to be in Minnesota. And I see Phil Shryock's on, and I don't know about Brian Coop from the board, but we're investigating different locations for next year for the members assembly. And the long-term idea is to move that around the country. So hopefully we can announce next year's members assembly at this year's members assembly. So, Jim McMahon, that's a good question. We need to get on that, the voting items that will be available for members to decide. I will tell you it won't be anything quite like last year, but it will basically be voting on board members. And if Brett wants to chip in here with other things, but that's largely going to be it. But we will get that out, because I agree people will need to know that if they decide if they want to vote individually or let the club carry the vote. Any other questions around the members assembly?
Hey, Dean.
Yeah.
What's the difference between getting trained as a scorer and a statistician?
Well, we've never had either, to be honest. So
okay.
We've never had certifications for statistician. I mean, you could say this would be statistics, but we kind of think analytics sounds a little sexier. So I think we're going to call it analytics certification. But you're absolutely right, Eric. It's no different than being trained to, if you've been trained in the past to score games, that's essentially what this will be. But yeah, that's basically it. Any other questions around that? I mean, I'm sensing from some of the stuff in the chat and the group that there is interest in that sort of certification. So I think we will have people interested in doing that. And we sort of tested on a small level with Gordon last year, having people score some games around the country, because we show like at our men's and women's nationals and our mixed doubles nationals and juniors, we show every sheet, every game. So it makes it a lot more cost effective. There was a time when if we were going to score an event, we had to have everybody there. Not that we will discourage people from attending by any means, but it will be more cost effective now that people can score remotely. So that's the members assembly, but you've given us, again, part of the reason for these meetings is we need to make sure we get some clarity around what issues are up for voting and a deadline for when people need to declare. It's in our, it is in our verbiage, but I don't have it at the tip of my tongue here. So, championship feedback. So we wrapped up with the 5 and under nationals. Just so everybody knows, we do a post-event survey from every nationals with competitors, and then Aaron Kaler, or often Aaron and I, will meet with the club to go over things that could have been done better, how we could have been a better partner, etc. So so we get surveys, but if there's any anecdotal feedback that this group has heard, happy to hear it here. Obviously, surveys are one method, but if you've heard anything good or bad, we'd love to hear it in this forum.
The
Or if
coverage
you
was
heard
awesome.
nothing. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the coverage was awesome. It was really cool having like the featured sheet with the commentators and the whole thing. It felt like watching pro level curling. It was really cool.
At the 5 and under nationals? Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I know several people from our club were watching it, and every single person was commented that they all said it was really, really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, as I've said before, it's that's something, we'd like to cover as many of our championships as resources allow. So we did some crowdfunding for that, because we knew there was demand for it. And, as advanced as Chaska is as a facility, they didn't have streaming built in. I will say that it would be, without some real revenue there, it'd be difficult to stream every event to that level. So when we go into a club like, say, Fargo, where they have a curling stadium set up built in, we'll use that. But the idea is we try to stream as much as possible. Denver, for instance, for the mixed fours, has their own streaming system, which we utilized. So like to stream as much as we can. Obviously, and one of my off-season agenda items is to find more sponsors for the whole championship season of streaming. So hopefully we can find more people to back that. On the stream itself, I'll be frank, it's a significant investment for us, all the streaming. So how we recoup some of that money, either through sponsorship or through, maybe not every game is free, or maybe some games require premium membership. Those are all things we're going to have discussions about in this off season. It's a bit of a balance, because we want to promote our game to as many people as possible, but we also believe there's an opportunity for some revenue there. And if you look at other sports, they're offsetting the coverage with some different approaches. Liz asked if there's any thought to have divisions at 5 and under nationals, men's and women's. Absolutely, there is, Liz. And, when I was in my previous role at USA Curling, I thought initially we'd have a men's and women's 5 and under nationals. But the feedback we've got at the time, and it continues, is there's a lot of women who have expressed that they can't put together an all women's 5 and under team at their club. So we don't want to eliminate them. We are hopeful that we'll have more women's only 5 and under events, qualifier events next year, or more events that are open to both genders, or require both genders. So it's an ongoing debate. It's not an easy thing, because right now we quite literally couldn't come up with 12 5 and under nationals qualifiers for women only. So I guess what I can say is it's recognized as an issue, and my hope is that in 5 years, it's 12 and 12. There's men's and women's, but I also know there's a feeling in that community that they like open format bonspiels and everything else. So ongoing look into that. We did have more female competitors at this year's 5 and under nationals than we ever have, but ideally we would have both. It's just there's not, frankly, the infrastructure built in to do that yet. So I'm glad you asked that question, though, because it's a championship feedback we get. So with that, I'll quickly go to 4. There is, if anybody has questions from people in their club, or if you're on the call and you have questions about officiating pathways, you can find those now on our in the Our House content platform, and it's pretty straightforward in terms of what you have to do. honestly, I'm going to say it's the first time in a while that I've understood how you become an official. So um, I think that that's good. If you go uh, into our house, and I can quickly share my screen, but Susie Darnetsky and Jenna Bercheski worked on this. This is a great example of how good our staff is. The other day I said, we really need officiating pathways somewhere. And they said, yeah, we have them up. So that's that's that lays it out. So for people in your club who are interested or anybody else who is interested, if you go into the officiating section, you'll be able to see the requirements for each level of certification. So I guess more often than not, I should just worry about a problem and let it be resolved on its own. But anyways, Phil's got his hand up. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I just putting on my Granite Curling Club hat for a minute here. I just had a question. The Seattle team, two of the Seattle teams got put in the same pool for the 5 and under, and because it's the way that the snake works. And I was just curious, is there any kind of a policy against that, or is that just kind of the way things are?
So that's a good question, Phil. In the past, what we've done is we haven't seeded teams, right? Because we always thought it was just too hard to seed a 24-team event where we don't really know where the teams are coming from. They've all played in different venues. So Ben Hoppy, one of our 5 and under participants, put together a seeding formula that we thought was great. So we decided to use that instead of what we've done in the past, which was where we did try to make sure that, 2 people from Granite wouldn't be in the same pool. And that's how it played out. So I think in the future, what we might do is say, let's do the seeding according to the formula that Ben created, which I think worked really well. But maybe at the same time, at the end, we review it to make sure that, 2 teams from Granite don't travel to Minnesota to play each other. But, that could throw everything off too. And more than anything, what I've come to realize is the competitors in that event want it to be a true competitive event. So sort of a balance, but a good question. And I can understand why they were maybe somewhat disappointed about that. I'm going to guess it wouldn't happen very often, but it did this year.
Thank you.
Dean, Tom from Nashville asks, how do we get a bonspiel added to the summer curling list of bonspiels?
Yeah, I think Teresa from Sioux Falls answered. She says at the bottom of the screen, there's something that says submit an event. So Teresa, thanks for providing that. If you are still struggling, Tom, don't be afraid to send an email to Jenna Bercheski or Jenna and Lauren Rich.
Yeah,
you got a little feedback too.
yeah, I see it now.
Okay.
Apologies. I do know.
No problem, man.
Sorry about that.
No, we just put out a news release with old dates for Arena National. So these things happen. So we fix those though. But that happens. So I'm actually glad you asked the question, because if it was a problem, we would have resolved it here. So
well, and frankly, Dean, if people start to know what their schedules are for the next season, please, we won't know unless you tell us when you're having your bonspiels.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll just announce this crew, which is we tease it on social, but Nashville is actually finally getting a bonspiel this summer. So I'll get it added to the event, and a registration opens up on Friday. So
that's great.
Just share that with the little larger crew out here.
So it opens on Friday, and when is the spiel?
Well, I don't want you to be mad at me, but it's the week
August 9th to 11th.
Yes. We are, as you know, restricted.
That's fine.
Some things. So yes, that's a little unfortunate timing, but that was the only time we get it to work. So
the reality is, Tom, it's tough to find any weekend that doesn't have something else going on. So
yeah.
I'll just wait till I get an email from somebody that says, I can't believe you scheduled the members assembly the same weekend as the Nashville Summer Spiel. So.
You send them my way, Dean, I'll handle them.
So, I mean, it's actually a sign of strength in the game that we have fewer and fewer weekends. There are always going to be conflicts. So, Well, I'm glad you're having that though. That should be great.
I saw Hollywood post something on social media about opening registration for their Bonspiel this summer.
Yeah, it's
Today?
also August 9th to 11th.
No, it's July.
I don't know actually. But yeah, no, it's great. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing that. I'm going to skip to 6 in the agenda just quickly because I think the last one is one where I'd like to have more dialogue. But so the ice technician certification process, and I know Phil Bruce from Cape Cod's probably especially interested in this, and others who are interested in ice tech work. So we have, if you haven't followed it, we have we're basically using the World Curling Ice Tech certification program. So there's basically 2 levels. There's like club ice technician, which is training people to make good ice within a curling club setting. And then there's championship ice technician certification, which involves learning how to make ice at a championship. So we are having the first club one in at Chaska at the end of June. And I think when I last checked with Lauren, we had at least 12 people set up or signed up. But it's I'm just looking at this at the comment about the Smoky Mountain Classic. Anyways, I'll stick with the ice tech thing. But so the way it works now is people take an online course through the World Curling, I'm trying to say World Curling instead of World Curling Federation because that's what they've switched to. Through World Curling, you take the online training and then attend the in-person session, which will be led by one of our 7 ice techs who completed the World Academy of Sport Training. So that's Sean Olson, Lauren Rich, Sean Stevenson, Greg Eisenhower, Frank Mogavero from Charlotte, and I should be able to, Jeff Schliesman from Madison, and Scott Belvich from Chaska. So they were all trained last summer in how to deliver that. So then that's a 2-day on ice practical session. So we'll obviously be learning a bit from this first one, just in terms of demand and delivery. And then we hope to roll those out, as much as there is demand for them. We're talking to Ardsley in New York about possibly, I don't know if Amy's on the call or not, but about possibly doing one there in the fall. And then we'd like to do one around the members assembly. Like I said, it can't be at Chaska, but we're hopeful that we can do it at Blaine that same weekend. 4 Seasons in Blaine, Minnesota. So there's a real debate now about the Smoky Mountain Classic, so I'll let that simmer in the chat, but I don't know if it's the same weekend or not. So if there are questions about ice technician certification, I will say that Lauren Rich in member services is a great asset for you on that. If you don't know Lauren, she heads up member services. She's also become one of our top ice techs, was a lead ice tech at Denver for the mixed fours and at the wheelchair mixed doubles. So she can both talk ice tech and how it works as a member, et cetera. So she's on vacation this week, so I didn't want to make her join this call, but reach out to Lauren if you have any questions or if your club has questions about that. I would encourage clubs, to probably, if you have, say, a volunteer ice tech crew, certainly a great way to reward them and pay for them to go to one of these sessions. So, and that's only going to pay the club back in better ice, right? So I think that's a good message back to clubs. It's an investment you can make in your crew that will reward you with better playing conditions. So the last thing I had, which was number 5 on the agenda, was, we have an ongoing agenda item to grow and increase female participation in the sport of curling. So if people have thoughts on that, we're open to all of them. And I just want to stress that it's on our radar as something we want to do. One of the things, for instance, that Lauren just brought up to me during the 5 and under nationals was that it would be that we should offer childcare at some events for people. So that's something we're looking at doing. I think we're going to try to offer childcare at the members' assembly. Not that only women look after kids, but the reality is that a lot of moms end up shouldering more of that than dads like me. So that's one thing, but I'm not, I don't have all the answers. So, and we don't have all the answers, but any ideas on that? And I'm actually have a call with Terry Gleason from the USWCA next week to talk about how, we can work with them to increase female participation. So I happen to think our sport's a great one for women. And I would, right now we're at about a 62% male, 38% women split, maybe a little better than that. But I'd love to see that, grow. So before we offer free learn to curl for Girl Scouts, it's great. Thanks, Robert. I don't know if anybody saw there's Girls Who Curl in the Twin City, which is a great program. Ladies leagues. It's interesting. My club in New Jersey, every league is open. And there's no men's, women's. We're a two-sheet club with usually about 240, 250 members. So the open system lets us accommodate a lot of people. So I think there's two things. Maybe there's women's leagues, but maybe there's also more open leagues.
Hey, Dean, we've had two gentlemen with their hands up.
Yeah, Rick and Phil. So go to Rick first.
Thanks. My female counterpart to this is a woman named Armstrong, and she is not available tonight. And so I am a poor representative to deliver the following messages. First off, if you look at the DEI stuff that U.S. Curling has on their website, it is terrific stuff. And for us, we can't read it without almost immediately going into brainstorming. And the only one of all the things they're going after on that site that we feel pretty good about is the mix between our female and male split. We are a 70-person arena club that on average gets the ice about 10 times a month. And our current participation roll has got 3 more females than it's got males in it. And so Susan and I sat down together and took a shot at saying, why is that? And a lot of this comes down to the culture of the club. But we did rank order 5 things that we wanted to say that we think has had an impact at our club. And the first and foremost one is the training and introduction to curling classes. That committee has been headed up by a female for many, many, many years. We are fortunate to have almost an equal amount of trained trainers that are ready to step in. And when we see what the makeup of the people who want to try curling is, we try to adjust the female male split of instructors along those lines. Number 2, we annually run the Women's All-American program, which is the only activity all year long which is open to only a single sex. The third one is the current president of our curling club is a single female. Now, that doesn't happen all that much, but most of the time prior to this, we have had co-presidents of the club in which a married couple has stepped in to do the job together. Mm-hmm. Number 4 was typically the only bonspiel we run each year is a 3-day mixed bonspiel. And so our only curl down league is a firm 2 male, 2 female league. And then finally, number 5, and this was an experiment. It's the first time we've ever run it this year, but we do recognize that while we like the split of people, we are still weak in the number of women who feel comfortable skipping. At the end of each year, we have about a 3-week long period to do anything we want. We try to do something that is fun and instructional. This year, we ran a triples tournament, which I suspect most of you are very familiar with it, but it's a game designed for training purposes in which each person on a 3-person team has to play each position for 2 ends of a 6-end game. So you're either a sweeper, a vice, or a skip, and you rotate every second in.
Great. Yeah.
And this was a bigger hit than we thought it might be, and so it may well be something we repeat again next year. So those were our top 5.
You know what happens during these discussions, Rick, is I ask someone to collate or gather all the suggestions that are in the chat and produce a document. But so there's lots of great stuff you just went through, and also some great stuff in the chat. I love the triples idea. I will say at my club, they tried a thing in the Tuesday night league where one draw they had all women skips, and it almost made my wife quit curling. But other than that, I'm in favor of it. I think you just have to be careful about whether you're forcing people to do it. That's great though, Rick. That's a lot of good stuff, and thanks for bringing that to the meeting. And I'll go to you next, Phil.
Okay, just real quick. First off was the triples. I just want to say that our 5 and under league, we had a micro session. We call them micro sessions because they're not the full length of the season. It is just a 4 or 5 week league, and we vary it throughout the season. The second half this year, it was more of a pickup league with our 5 and under curlers. And my wife, who's the curling chair, mentioned triples curling to them, and they loved it, and they took off with it and ran it themselves, and they had a great time. So I just wanted to say to you, Rick, yeah, triples does seem like it's going places. Yeah. But about the women's skips, as Liz mentioned in the chat room, we at Cape Cod, we do have a very good women's league, but it has its ups and downs, and that's various reasons. Because one, we have it on Thursdays, which is tough for females that do like to travel for bonspiels, because they're getting underway on Thursday, or they have to cancel. Other reasons is we have bonspiels, so we end up canceling Thursdays. So we're trying something different this year, and we'll see how that goes. But the biggest complaint, my wife and I were talking about this just the other day, was how to get women to skip in the open leagues. We have a lot of open leagues, and we try to get an even split of male and female skips. But some of the leagues, we're lucky if we can get an 80-20 split with females that want to skip. We have females that are playing in the vice or in the second position that are better than many of the males that are skipping, but they just don't want to skip. They say absolutely not, they're not going to skip. And we just don't know how to get them to agree to skip, the ones that are capable. So that's something that we're looking into, is trying to figure out how to get people to step up and skip when they really should be.
I think you just have to tell them that the men are too oblivious to realize that they shouldn't be skipping, Phil. No, it's that's an issue though. I mean, I see that in my club. It's you know, there's a dynamic there that, you know, there's a lot of men who think they should be skipping, and that doesn't mean, by the way, that skipping is the be all and the end all either. I think it's just that there's certainly women who are more than capable, as Phil points out, that may not want to.
And by the way, Liz just posted in the comments that she's one of those women who does not like skipping.
Yeah,
that is absolutely correct. She should be skipping in every open league that she enters.
Yeah, my wife didn't like skipping at all, so it was actually, that's interesting. Try having them skip, but maybe throw lead rocks. One of the things that I like about skipping, and forget, whether it's women's or men's, is I find that it helps newer curlers advance just by seeing that perspective, right? And there's people who play for years and never see what a shot looks like from the rings, and I think it's hard to develop as a curler. So who's up next? Because we've heard from Lauren, because we've heard from men here. So let's hear from Lauren.
Hi, everybody. Lauren Whitmer from Bowling Green. So there have been some really great ideas shared, and I've been furiously taking notes. So thank you to everybody who shared. One thing that we tried in Bowling Green this past year as a way to grow our women's league was to hold a women's starter league in like during our women's league time. So we had 2 sheets of regular women's league and 2 sheets of starter league happening at the same time, and folks from women's league were rotating in and out. It was in a way very successful. We had 16 new people come out and try curling, which was fantastic. Unfortunately, our retention in the transition from starter league into joining the full league, I think we only retained 1 of those women, which was really unfortunate. We also, unfortunately, did not do any kind of follow-up evaluation with those folks to see why they didn't join, but based on just casual conversation that I had with several of them, it really seemed that it came down to time, right? They were younger women than our club average, and 6 o'clock on a Tuesday is a busy time for people with kids and people with jobs and all of those things. So it was really tough, and we didn't have many other options available for other leagues for them to move into. And again, we do mostly 20-week leagues, which is a huge commitment for a new curler. So we're looking at shorter options and more flexible options. I also want to point out just a couple other things. Folks like non-binary folks, gender diverse folks seem less interested in gender specific leagues. And unfortunately, I have seen in women's curling spaces as well as in mixed curling spaces, folks not always being friendly or kind, explicitly or kind of accidentally saying things that were not super welcoming or kind. So that kind of goes along with just the bigger thing about the culture and attitudes. And we see that toward women as well. So I just finished my 3rd year curling and am a person who is not conflict averse in any way, and not afraid to speak up about things. And, on the ice, I'm regularly pointing out to guys when they're treating their female teammates poorly. And it would be really helpful if other men started pointing that out to their teammates and their opponents and not just leave it to the women. Because we need more women skips, but also not all women want to skip, but you should be able to play any position and not be constantly undermined by the people you're playing with and against.
Those are all good points, Lauren. I would say that, I think anybody who curls and regularly and is invested in the game, and if you're in somewhat of a leadership position in your club, I know I'm not afraid to say things on the ice at my club, not specifically about women all the time, but just if I see a skip or somebody treating somebody new not well, I generally pretty vocal. But I think those are all good points, and I'm not exactly sure how we document that and sort of push that message out, but there has to be some way to do that. I think also as some of this goes back to conversion rates and things, and I know that as we continue to develop different approaches to learn to curls, some of this will be relevant there as well. I know a couple people said female instructors. I know my friend Ben Shapiro, I want to tackle this just because Ben from Fargo wrote, maybe the program should fund the same number of 4-person women's teams and athletes. And that's an obvious thing. If you followed the funding of our teams this year, we're funding 3 men's teams and 2 women's teams. Now in the development pool, we have more women than men, but the reality of that is, as this is a whole other thing, but as Milan Cortina gets closer, we really need to focus our dollars on the teams that we think are going to produce podium finishes. So that's what we call, what the USOPC and others call being value investors at this point. Now, going forward, what we see each quad is having the widest funnel at the start and then narrowing that as we get closer to the game. So it's basically being rewarded for performance as we get closer to the games. So I'll tackle that because I know it's not something that was not discussed and debated extensively. Sorry, I think somebody else had their hand up. Who was that? Jeremy.
Yeah, well, since you brought it up, Dean, on that 3 versus 2, so is it the same pool of money that's going to the women's teams? Like the women's pool is getting split in 2 and the men's pool is getting split in 3?
No, I think you could say it's all the money's getting split among 5 teams versus 6.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's obviously we'd like to have, we didn't have 3 teams on the women's side in ranking where it warranted more funding, literally barely 18 months away from the Olympic Games. So those are hard decisions. And, I think looking ahead, what we'd love to have is, 6 teams of each gender and really hard decisions, but we're not there yet. So, it's important to us, just so everybody in this call knows, just qualifying for the Olympic Games is not easy anymore. And that's obviously important for the organization. So we're hoping that by focusing dollars a little bit more on the teams that are more highly ranked, that helps on that effort. But again, I think at the start of each quad, you can expect to see us have the wider funnel at the start. And this is off sort of what we're talking about here, but a wider funnel at the start, men's or women's, and, encompassing more teams, narrowing that as we get closer to each games and essentially rewarding performance. I mean, I wish we had more dollars. That would be one thing, right? But we have a limited number of dollars.
Dean, this is Rachel Orvik.
Hey, Rachel.
What I'd like to say is there a curriculum or something where it's just learn how to skip for women? I'd like to see that. And that might encourage more women to go into the skipping role. I mean, I play Vice a lot and I have to skip when my skip is not there, but I don't like it because I don't necessarily feel comfortable laying down the broom.
Yeah.
Strategy is okay, but where to put the broom is bothersome to me.
Well, I've curled for, almost 50 years and won a national championship, and I still don't know where to put the broom when I skip. So you're not alone. That's probably why when I play in my league, which is an open league, I like to throw last rock and not call the game. So, but yeah, I think that's maybe just a guide to skipping in general. I don't know if that's gender specific, but a guide to skipping in general.
Yeah, that would be good because then, we could share that among, fortunately, we're a large club and we do have a lot of women, but there has been no focus on learning how to skip.
Right.
Thank you.
For sure. Sarah.
And I'm Sarah from Charlotte Curling. And actually, our club did a skip clinic just within our own club. And we did a thing where we got like the most experienced skips in our club. We had a couple of men and a couple of women. And we actually had a night where we went and sat down and we had a huge question and answer, and we went down and asked for tips and tricks, and It actually was very successful, and we had a lot of women that were a part of that to be invited to learn about all that. And and then after that, we actually had quite a few of them that went and actually curled and did skipping on some of the beginner leagues. So we tried it and liked it, and other clubs, that might be something that you could try and see if it helps. It really helped us. And like I said, it was a lot of fun. Some people were nervous. I was one of them, but I ended up going out of that and I ended up skipping in a beginner league, and now I'm addicted to it. So it just, when you set up things like that and have fun, I mean, you never know, you may hook some people. So I know it hooked me, and we had a lot of fun with it. So that might be something that some clubs could do.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you, Sarah.
Let me just ask this as like a more 30,000 feet question. Do we think that just the structure of our game, and I actually have a thing in my own club where I think people give too much credit to who's skipping and whatever else. But do we think that structure is actually an impediment to female participation? Like just that, oh, there's this skip who's supposed to, who's supposed to know everything, but rarely does. But, is that an overall impediment that our game has to address?
This is Rachel. In my opinion, no. At our club, we have so many excellent skips that you feel, like I curl with Margie Smith, I curl with Rich Ruhanen, I curl, I can't compare to those guys.
Well, you can compare to Rich, come on.
Okay.
I got to say that because Rich always says I'm a terrible curler, so.
I don't know what he'd say about me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I guess there's two tracks here. Is it like, do we want more women skipping or just more women playing? And I guess both are probably goals. Yeah.
Definitely both. Yeah.
I haven't looked at the chat here recently. More skip education overall. I think and Brett and Phil at the last board meeting saw a preview of, we're using a platform called Slow Coach, which is a terrible name, but it's a great platform that we're going to introduce these coaching modules, and going forward, that can be a place where we hope we'll be able to have something like John Schuster does a 15-minute thing on calling the game or reading ice and things like that. So it's a pretty dynamic platform that we hope to grow. I wish, like all these things, nothing happens as quickly as we'd all like, but that is in the works.
Neat.
Phil wrote in the comments, we run a 5 and under event in Seattle for newbies, and almost every year, without exception, a woman gets bullied by a toxic male. We shut that down immediately. Good for you, Phil. So I think there's lots of good suggestions in here, though, and so if there's anybody, like I said, I always turn people into volunteers. But if there's anybody who wants to sort of put some of these into a document, I don't think it has to be a fancy document, just a listing of what was shared here. And then we could take that and turn it into something on the content platform. That would be awesome. Or if it just means you're going back to your clubs and saying, how can we increase female participation, and ideas come back. A lot of this goes back to just our conversion rates in general, which it's an ongoing thing for us, is to try to help clubs improve those conversion rates. There's a lot of talk about newcomer leagues and, how do you run what's the length of your first learn to curl, and how do you integrate members? And then I think, how do you make women curlers feel really comfortable quickly, I think is a question that we need to address.
Mm-hmm.
I do like this idea that John from Long Island and others mentioned about offering someone this is good, women or not, but offering someone a chance to skip but not making them throw last rock. We could probably do more of that. I'm a little confused, Sarah. Just maybe think about doing a men's nationals and a mixed nationals.
So like a men's 5 and under, or making it like a mix where the team is like, you have to at least have one woman, or it could be both, 2 men or 2 women on the team. I know
Right.
that's probably, money and things like that, but that might be a way to be able to see, are there, a lot of, that would like give it if there's like a lot of men's teams that are going in and playing these 5 and unders. If a lot of them get into the men's, how many other spots are there left for, mixed teams with women and men on them? And if it turns out that there's a great number or, many numbers of both, then it's like you have a men's and then you have one where it's women and men.
Got it. Hey, Chris from Traverse City bringing up the social leagues where you swap positions, which is, I think, akin to the triples. I think you can do that whether it's triples or like they're doing in Traverse City, where you can rotate through. I do know that's an effective thing too for young junior curlers. Even like in Saskatchewan, they did a 15U triples event. The year before, they had a 15U junior event and it didn't fill. They did a 15U triples event. They had 32 teams. So I do think just in general, whether it's rotating positions or using the actual triples format and rotating positions is great, probably both for helping women feel more comfortable and then just new curlers in general. So I would encourage clubs to consider those options, and let us know how they fare. But I haven't heard of anybody who struggles with that, right? Like if you do that, I think, like I said earlier, I think people get a better understanding of the game. Jonathan says they did that at Houston. That should probably be, something we put in these learn to curl, conversion rate documents about just making sure that people play different positions. Well, this has been helpful, instructive to me.
Dean, can I go back and just review one more thing on the championship feedback from competitors?
Yeah.
There were many of my friends, including myself, we were disappointed that there was not coverage for the senior playdowns. Was that a matter of the club that they played at, that they didn't have a curling stadium, or was it money, or how did that work out?
Both of those things. So you're talking about the senior women's nationals?
Senior men's playdowns.
Well, senior men's nationals and senior women's nationals, there's both sign up and go events. So, neither one was streamed. And it was because the clubs didn't have those sort of setups. Heather Curling Club in Mapleton didn't have that. And then it does come down to resources. As I've said, it's, streaming any event is an relatively expensive undertaking for us, right? So, like I said, if I look at the schedule for next year, I think most clubs will have streaming set up. But we don't always have that. I mean, Chaska, which is, one of our most advanced facilities, didn't have streaming for 5 and under nationals. So it comes down to dollars and, and funding those things. One thing we are looking at next year is just, I'll share this, is we didn't get much just for this group. We had projected $500,000 in revenue with this new membership model, and we're at about 735 right now. So the new membership model was well received. We had far more basic and competitor coach members than we anticipated or projected because we were trying to be conservative. But what we didn't get much traction for was the premium membership, especially, was one. And we are looking at maybe offering streaming. Maybe that's a way you get to see streamed events with a premium membership. So all those things are under consideration in the off season because we'd love to have more streaming. Yeah, you're right, Liz. There was no commentary, but 100% agree, Vanessa. The women's national trophy should be the same size as the men's nationals trophy. And it's good timing because I'm meeting Derek Kaiser, who is from the Ardsley Curling Club. He's a carpenter and he redid the Women's Club Nationals trophy for us. And I'm taking both trophies to meet him tomorrow, and they will be the same height. So
Yeah.
it's long overdue. I agree. So we're not going to change the cup on the top because there's some history with those, but they will be the same height. Somebody else has a hand up. Let me see. Jim.
Thanks, Dean. I heard you mention maybe restricting streaming to a premium style membership, and from an accessibility standpoint and marketing, that seems like the way to kill curling as a viewable event. I know people at my club stream curling all day long, every day, and we actually get a lot of new folks that have stumbled across it on various platforms. So by restricting access to it, I think we're probably hurting ourselves more than benefiting long term. And I know it's expensive to stream, but it might be worth finding sponsors to offset the cost rather than putting the burden on the members that are already involved in the sport.
Yeah, I think I said at the top that that's a balance, right? Because we do want to expose people to the sport. We want people to find it. So I'm throwing this out there. I'm not saying we're making any moves here at this point. But we struggle to find sponsors, quite frankly. And we struggle to find people. I mean, this past year, we could easily spend $100,000 a year on streaming. So at some point, we're going to have to figure out a financial model. And this isn't just related to curling. It's frankly sports media in general. But I don't disagree with you, Jim. We're at a point with our sport where we need to expose people to it. But there are costs, and I'm throwing this out there just as a discussion because we don't have all the answers. And I don't think we would ever do something where not every game, where there would, maybe it's only some games are restricted. Or look, if we can have a really successful off season and find some people that want to sponsor, our streaming, then we wouldn't have to. But there's a lot of sports out there looking for sponsors for streaming, so we're not alone, and it's not a particularly easy sell. Not that we're not trying, but it's not, and we need to find sponsors for it that aren't endemic sponsors, right? Like the curling industry only has so much money to give to this effort, so we need to find, and look, that's part of a broader sponsorship agenda that we work pretty hard at. And we're hoping to have some news to announce on that front in the next few months. Don't disagree. It's an odd balance, and I throw it out there because we're not the only sport, that's not the NFL or a major sport that struggles with this, because everybody wants everything streamed, right? So, and I understand that. I do too. I mean, I like to watch curling as streaming. So. Is there anything else? I always say I try to keep these meetings to an hour because with our other groups, what we found is when they go long, we start to lose good people. So it's 9:05, so we're an hour and 5 minutes. Feel free to follow up with any emails or email me or Brett or anyone with thoughts. And like I said, Liz has her hand up. Go ahead, Liz.
I just wanted to, I saw that you announced the locations for next year for, I think it was Club Nationals and Senior Men's and Women's.
Yep.
And I was looking on the website, I think yesterday actually, because for our annual meeting, for our reports on where things are for next year, I know you only, there isn't a listing, just one place of everything for next year yet for championship locations and dates. Even the one, at least I couldn't find it.
Well, if you scroll down in today's release, you'll see next year. And then there's also, if you scroll down, there's 24 through 27 event calendar. And there's a few that we're hoping to announce here pretty soon. If you scroll, and we're also going to put the chart that we have at the bottom, 24 through 27. We're going to put that in the events page on the site.
Great. That's what I was actually really looking for, is to make sure there's something on the website that is easily accessible, because it ends at the end of this year's championships.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything beyond that yet for next year. And it happened to be yesterday when I was looking. So the announcement came out today. So
well, if you scroll a little further in today's announcement, we did put this chart up, and we are going to put this elsewhere on our site, so you can clearly see where we're looking for host sites. For instance, juniors we actually have through 2028. And there are a couple other, like 5 and unders for next year. We're close to announcing men's and women's Olympic trials. I'll give everybody a heads up. That's going to be announced May 13th. So next Monday. And then just so everybody knows, within your club, when people ask about this stuff, we never hold back an announcement once we have either a signed contract or a signed memo of understanding. But we do want to have those before we actually announce. So that's sometimes the only thing that holds these things up. But there are some where, we still need a host, for instance, for college nationals next year. And ideally that's a 4-sheet club somewhere in the East. So you can see in that chart what we need. We need a host for the at-large arena nationals playdown. We're not sure where things are going to end up with the GNCC, so we're continuing to plan for at-large playdowns. But we will make that it's in today's release, and we will make it more available throughout the website.
Great, thank you.
Just again, just so everybody knows, there's nothing we would like more, nothing that would help me sleep better if we had sites through 2028. So if any club is entertaining hosting, we'd be happy to discuss. I know Aaron Kaler, our events director, said he's had more interest in the past couple months than he ever has, so that's encouraging. One of the challenges we have too is that our 24 team events, where it's 12 men's and 12 women's teams, they do work best on 6 sheets. We do consider others though. We're going to put the club nationals in Milwaukee next year, which is a 5-sheet club. So that'll add a half day to the event, but we think it's worth it. And we can't just lean on all this 6-sheet and above clubs all the time. So the other option, if you are with your club, if there's a 4-sheeter and a 2-sheeter that are in relatively close proximity, we think that's an opportunity, or a 4 and 4 that are in relatively close proximity. We could do a combined event. So I'll throw that out there too. All right. Cliff's cat showed up. My dog's downstairs. For sure, Phil. I will always throw it. The one other one that we have mixed 4s is actually at Denver through next season. Denver has been a great host. It's likely that they would agree to do something else. But one nice thing with mixed 4s is that with the 12-team field and 2 pools of 6, it could actually work in a 3-sheet club. So it's an opportunity for a smaller club to host a national championship. All right, it's 9:10. I think if anything else, like I said, if anybody wants to gather some of this stuff on women's curling, I'd be thrilled. But otherwise, we'll have this recorded and we'll pull it. Thanks, everybody.